Hello, and welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. Today we're going to talk about the other stuff when shooting. Things in your range bag, bring in your vehicle. When you go for a training session, a training class, a range session, things like that. What are the other things besides the gun and the ammo? Before we get into the day's topic, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review. And if this is not the first time you've tuned in, please consider going to goodshepherdtraining.com and supporting on Patreon. I will plug in the bio if you want to skip it. Skip around 3 minutes and 45 seconds from where it starts. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in LAPD. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace, He got me through some nasty places in this world of war zones and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents He's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, whitetail deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. And I don't apologize for that either. FBI certified, firearms instructor, NRA, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an SRT, special response team, in a large metropolitan area, where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news, preacher, a fisher of men. With that, we will roll into the day's topic. All right, men. You've got your gun, you've got your ammo, you're ready to rock and roll. But not quite. There's quite a few other things that you should probably have. Whether you're going to a
formal training class, or just a range session? Number one, if you heard the bio, you probably guessed it, a Bible. You should always have a Bible. Have it in your car, have one on you. If you are somewhere, some certain geographical location, you ought to have a Bible with you. It is important as a man to know how to shoot. Equally important, or more important, is knowing when to shoot. And you get that from what right and wrong is, what truth is. And you find that in the Bible. What are some other things you will like to have on any training class or range session you may not think about? The first two kind of go together. Bug repellent and sunscreen. You may not notice it at the time, but if it's a multi-day event, shooting competition, training class, or if you're just going home the next day or going to work, if you've ever had really bad sunburn, you'll appreciate having a $1 or $2 cheap, who knows what sunblock costs now with inflation, but you get the point. A cheap thing of sunblock in your bag is a very important thing to have. Another very important thing to have is bug repellent. Not so much for me here in Arizona or when I was in Nevada for long periods of time or up in the Sierra Nevadas, but if you're somewhere where there are bugs, pretty much anywhere east of the Mississippi, and especially south of the Mason-Dixon where I grew up, you will want bug repellent anytime you go outside in any of anything but the winter months. So again, a cheap thing, a sunblock and bug repellent. Very important things to have in your range bag, in your little red wagon, whatever you carry your range supplies in. Moving on from there, a neck gaiter. These are really handy whether it's chilly outside, whether it's hot outside. The neck gaiters, I was rocking them long before they were cool in COVID. I wore them all the time, especially in shooting. One of the number one things that get burnt is your ears and your neck and things like that. And those neck gaiters can really help. And if it's a really cold day, they can help with windburn as well. I like the 100% polyester ones. I'm using the SA brand ones, like Sierra Alpha, for quite a while. I get no kickback, or I don't take any bribes or anything. They just make good ones, and you usually get them in a multi-pack. And they're affordable, and they work. Another big thing, a multi-tool. Now, if you want to have like your own little gunsmithing kit, that's fantastic. But I would say, even if you have that, and especially if you don't have that, a good multi-tool. A good multi-tool, and I'm not going to get into what's better than the other. If you want a Leatherman, get a Leatherman. If you want a Gerber, get a Gerber. Any of those is fine. I would consider, if you can afford it, just a range-specific kind of multi-tool with the different heads on it, the hex heads and the Torx bits, and the common ones you'll find most of the time for gunsmithing, for optics, your flat head, your Phillips head, your basic standard bits. Those are pretty nice. A good multi-tool is a good thing to have. Along with that, a good set of punches. You don't need like a complete set, but a couple of the common sets of punches, they do come in handy. Another real good thing to have, Loctite. If you've ever not Loctited something down and had it come loose at an inopportune time in the middle of a training class, optics goes flying off, loses its zero, don't spend, $1,000 on a rifle and $500, $1,000 on an optic and skimp out on the $699 it costs for Loctite. Loctite's not cheap, but compared to your gun and your ammo and your optic and the cost of zeroing and the cost of a training class, it is cheap. So, blue Loctite, not the red Loctite. I have learned that the hard way. Not the red Loctite, the blue Loctite. But have some of that in your range kit. It comes in handy. Another one of the most important things, a Sharpie. A Sharpie, you can use other things like paint markers and too, but Sharpies are cheap and easy, and they're usually part of my EDC anyway. But a Sharpie, the number one thing you'll probably use this for is marking your holes. Whether you're trying to sight in a gun or just trying to refine your technique. Nothing's worse than going up to target and be like, well, I think that hole was there. Maybe it's an old one. Maybe it's a new one. I'm not really sure. Maybe I should go 5 clicks to the right. And you're like, oh, crap, that wasn't the hole. And I'm all screwed up. So just a good, cheap marker or Sharpie in your pocket when you go to the range. It'd be odd if you didn't use it. Another good thing those Sharpies are good for is once you get your optic or whatever your sights or iron sights where you like them, mark them with the Sharpie. Then if they move, you'll know. And then if they do move, it's much easier to get them sighted back in. You You aren't just going to put it back where it was and trust it. You need to confirm it, but it's a very good reference point and will likely save you quite a bit of frustration and ammo. Let's talk about the eyes and the ears. I say have both. Have the outer ears and the inner ears. If you're just shooting outside and you're shooting something that's not super loud, the foamies are fantastic. They're good. They're cheap. I'd say have a couple of sets of them. Have a bag of them because they're cheap. And a lot of times other people forget their ears. So just a cheap thing of the foamies in your range bag are great. They actually work really, really well for reducing noise. Sometimes you may want outer ears. And if you're shooting on an indoor range, a little pro tip, both. If you're ever shooting at an indoor range, use both. Use the inner ears and the outer ears. Indoor ranges are loud, a lot louder than shooting outside. And it can get pretty obnoxious if you're in there and you're shooting an SBR or the person next to you is shooting an SBR. Any kind of super loud gun. They're shooting, a .357, snub nose, revolver, anything that's super loud. It's beneficial to have both. I don't generally feel it's necessary to have the Electronic Ear Pro. I can usually hear everything going on without it. The exception to that is if you're going to a training class where there's going to be a long line of people and the instructor may be all the way down at one end. So if you're taking an expensive training class, very likely you're going to want some good electronic hearing protection. They also make inner ear electronic hearing protection. I like these a lot. I used them a lot when I was a professional hunter and guide. I like them mostly for that. They are expensive. They're nice if you're going to be wearing them all day and you only want the inner ears, like say for hunting. You can even amplify the noise so that it makes things louder than they would naturally be. They're not super comfortable to wear all day, but they are way more comfortable to wear all day than the outer ears, unless it's freezing cold. Don't forget your sunglasses if you're shooting outside, and don't forget your clear glasses if you're shooting inside. If you don't know, I started out in the world of competitive shooting fairly early. And one of the things we had standard was yellow glasses. If you don't know, yellow glasses really help contrast black and white. A lot of gun sights are black. A lot of reticles are black in a scope. Also, usually the targets are black and white, especially traditional targets. So, yellow glasses in a lot of environments are great for shooting better than regular sunglasses if they're dark enough. Even work pretty well in low light. I really like yellow glasses. Plus, if you're trying to attract the ladies, go for the yellow aviators because they're just super cool. So if you're going to the range to attract the ladies, I would highly recommend the yellow aviators. Thankfully, I am not. By God's grace, those days are over. I have a beautiful wife. And of course I am kidding, but yellow aviators do work really well. In fact, I did start competition shooting with yellow aviators, and they have been a staple in a competition shooting environment, whether that's shotgunning or Olympic style rifle. You'll see a lot of competitors using yellow aviators, or they can be other styles too, but there's nothing wrong with yellow aviators. But give yellow tinted glasses a try, whether you're hunting or shooting a day out at the range. One exception would be if it's really, really bright out, and then I tend to go to bronze, which is kind of yellow, kind of not. Those work really well in a desert environment in which I shoot in a lot. If you're shooting in what I would refer to as like the jungles of the southeastern United States, anywhere from Virginia to Florida, you may think about green ones if you're shooting in a lot of a green environment. But anyway, this show is not about sunglass tints. It's about other stuff in your range bag, so let's move on. Water is super important. I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but water. And don't just bring enough to drink. Bring enough to wash your hands and do stuff like that with, too. A 5-gallon jerry can ought to be in your car anyway, and it comes in handy for shooting. But if you're not going to bring a 5-gallon jerry can to the range, at least stop and get an extra whole gallon, not just a bottle or two of water. Bring quite a bit of water, more than you think you need. You can always not drink it or not wash your hands with it, but can't wash your hands or drink it if you don't have it. We did a whole podcast on targets and how important targets are. Don't just show up and shoot whatever's there. I mean, if it's a training class, obviously you're going to shoot their targets. But if you're going to the range and bringing your own targets, think about what you want to practice and what target best lets you do that and achieve those goals. Don't just haphazardly buy whatever target. Give some real thought to your target. We did a whole podcast episode on that. Things for your target. I think you should have a roll of duct tape on your range bag or somewhere nearby, maybe 2 rolls of duct tape. I would say just a regular run-of-the-mill gray or black duct tape, and then some really brightly colored duct tape if you want to use it for zeroing or you want to make something else into an impromptu target. Really bright orange or bright yellow duct tape is also a really handy thing to have. Even if you carry a stapler or staples, which you probably should if you're at that kind of range, a lot of times they run out, they break, whatever. Having that duct tape as a backup can really make your day a lot easier. The next one, super glue. Super glue can come in handy whether you cut yourself and you need super glue, or whether something gets broken and you need to fix it with super glue. Sometimes sights work loose, especially the traditional dovetail sights. Is super glue the best fix? No, but if you are at an expensive training class and that's all you can do, a lot of times that'll pin that in place and keep it there until you can get a better solution later. And super glue is cheap, so why not have some in your range bag? Probably the last thing we're going to talk about is have a medical kit, some stuff for minor injuries and some stuff for major injuries. Have a tourniquet. Things do happen. You are dealing with firearms. They are weapons designed to kill. There's nothing wrong with that. That's neither good nor bad. It just is. So if you're dealing with a machine that's meant to do that, you should probably have something in case something goes wrong. Having a tourniquet and just a simple medical kit wherever you are is a good idea all the time, but especially if you are intentionally shooting a firearm. I think that's pretty good. It's going to be a shorter episode. I am on the schedule to work 6 days this week, guys. I hope you'll appreciate the effort and time put into these podcasts. If you do, please consider supporting on Patreon. You'll find that at goodshepherdtraining.com. goodshepherdtraining.com. And again, the Patreon link on there. There's some cool content and some cool stuff you get for being a Patreon, but mostly do it because you believe in the content and you think it's worth it. With that, that's going to bring us to the tactical tip of the day. Kind of seems like there was a lot in this episode already, but I'll give you a bonus one. We talked about having that bright orange duct tape, or you can do this with a bright orange sticky, like sometimes they have a little 1-inch, about the size of a quarter, fluorescent, obnoxiously colored stickers. Put one of those on the top of your slide, on your pistol, or your shotgun, or whatever, just behind the front sight. Think of it as a giant fat front sight when you're doing CQB. Now, when you're doing fine work and doing distance work, that's going to disappear because your slide's going to come out and be flat, so you're not going to see it. You're going to see your sights. But up close and acquiring a sight picture quickly and fast firing, that big giant dot, essentially a big obnoxiously bright colored front sight, can really help orient your pistol, especially when you're shooting very, very quickly. So consider that the tactical tip of the day, a little pro tip there. And I'll give you another one. We mentioned those neck gaiters. If you're shooting somewhere where it's hot, a great thing to do, and I did it all the time, especially in Vegas, where it was ridiculously hot a lot when I was shooting. Take that 100% polyester neck gaiter, take an empty water bottle or an empty gallon jug of water, cut it in half, pour some water in there, and keep dipping it in there and putting it on your neck, putting it around your neck. You're basically creating a swamp cooler on your neck, and that blood flowing through your neck, that greatly can cool you down. If you're ever shooting on a really, really hot day, it really can be a wonderful thing. Just have the breeze blowing on that wet, neck gaiter on the back of your neck. And that's going to bring us to the tactical verse of the day. It's a reading from 1 Samuel, one of the great stories in the Bible of David. We all probably know, even if you're not a Christian, even if you don't listen to this for any kind of Christian context, you probably know the story of David and Goliath. I'm not going to read the part of the killing of Goliath. Your servant has killed both lion and bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, seeing that he has defied the armies of the living God. Moreover, David said, the Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and from the paw of the bear, he will deliver me from the hand of the Philistine. This is a man after God's own heart, the Bible says, David, a mighty warrior. He slayed both man and beast, and he was beloved by God. Remember also Exodus 15, the Lord is a man of war, and you were made in his image. Remember that, and have a blessed day.